Welcome back to the Culture Check in the Green, the space where we pause, we zoom out, and really examine what's happening around us. Today's episode isn't about telling you who to agree with. Let's make that abundantly clear. It's about what's happening when disagreements turn into destruction. Over the past few weeks, we see that Stephen A. Smith has faced backlash, with some people labeling him a sellout simply because his views don't line up with what's popular or expected. Now, I'm going to be abundantly clear. You don't have to agree with him. But the way we respond to disagreement, that also matters. Because when we start attacking people instead of their ideas, we damage more than their reputations. We damage culture. And I understand that's twofolded here. And I don't want to come across as some Stephen A. sympathizer. Because I'm not. I can honestly say, yeah, he can come off a little annoying. He can come off a little rambunctious at times. But disagreeing with him, that's fair. Having healthy conversation, that's fair. Healthy cultures require debate, and they require different perspectives. They require uncomfortable conversations. It seems like what we're seeing now goes way beyond disagreement. There's moments where we have people saying he's a sellout. But what we see in these moments, what often really they're saying is, if you don't think the way I think, your credibility is gone. And that mindset does not encourage progress. It enforces conformity. Now, I said the word sellout for a specific reason. I want us to understand what the problem is with using the sellout label. The word sellout is used to mean abandoning your values for personal gain. Now, it's often used to describe someone who simply won't stay in the box. But one thing I can actually say, and I have watched Stephen A. on whether it's First Take, whether it's on his political show, Straight Shooter, or his sports show, he's consistent. He's been consistent for decades. He's always been outspoken. He's always been opinionated and willing to challenge people across the board. What's changed? It wasn't him. What's changed? What really has changed is the tolerance for independent thinking. When disagreement is treated as betrayal, real accountability disappears. And to me, what it seems like to me, I just don't like how he's saying it versus what he's saying. There's one part of this conversation I want to approach very carefully, but honestly though. So, upon recent social media news, you see Representative Jasmine Crockett out of Texas has publicly referred to Stephen A. Smith using the term Django. Now, I want to be clear. This is my opinion, and it is a critique of rhetoric, not a judgment of her character or her intentions. I want to start here by saying I respect Representative Crockett. I respect her work ethic, her passion, and her stated desire to make change. I wish there was more people like her. I'm even prouder that she's a Black woman doing what she's doing. And that deserves acknowledgement. But that being said, I do believe there's certain languages and certain rhetoric and statements against individuals, and what she had used in that social media post was wrong. Not because disagreement isn't allowed, because it most clearly is. And not because public figures can't be criticized. They definitely can. But because reducing someone to a loaded label like that, if you've seen the movie where that term came from, especially without direct engagement, shifts the conversations away from the ideas and into personal framing. And I'm going to say here, if something that Stephen A. Smith said was taken as offensive, the most productive response, especially from an elected official, is dialogue, clarification, and engagement. That's the best way for your platform or for what you are trying to accomplish to get across. And there is video evidence of Stephen A. Smith publicly inviting her, Representative Crockett that is, to come on his show and have an open conversation. And up to this point, that conversation still has not taken place. And I'm not saying that as an accusation, but as a principle. Because leadership isn't demonstrated by who you label from a distance. is demonstrated by who you are willing to engage with face to face. And in my opinion, how you deal with certain individuals face to face, or whether it's through social media, does paint a picture. It does put a perception in the air. Now, I can say this situation, it does highlight a broader issue in today's culture. This is just the one that's catching public eye because they're both major public figures in the world and in the Black community. There is a constant desire, especially in this generation today, to cancel people for the moment they say something that's unpopular, that's something that's uncomfortable, and something that challenges the narrative. Not because it's harmful, but because it demands accountability. And instead of engaging with the message, the instinct becomes silencing the messenger. And in many spaces, accountability is no longer viewed as an opportunity for growth. It's treated as an attack. So rather than being called up, people feel called out. And instead of responding, they try to shut the conversation down entirely. And I can honestly say a lot of individuals struggle with this deeply. Rather than confronting uncomfortable truths, it can feel easier to silence the individual who exposed them. I mean, can we honestly, just from this example of Stephen A. Smith and him in this light of being, in my opinion, characterized in a negative way, are you really listening to what he's saying or how he's saying it? But I will say this, silencing someone doesn't solve the issue. It just delays the issue. Accountability is not oppression. Discomfort is not harm. And disagreement is not violence. Now, I want to talk about this, as I said it a couple times already, with calling up. And I do want to make sure I'm handling this very carefully. That's why I'm very tactful in how I'm saying the words that I'm saying. When people ask why some in the Black community feel like Stephen A. Smith is against them, I truly believe the real issue isn't politics. It's expectation. Stephen A. Smith is a highly visible Black man with a massive platform. And for some people, that visibility comes with an unspoken rule. That is, if you look like us, you're supposed to speak like us, not challenge us. So when he critiques rhetoric, questions strategies, or refuses to repeat what's popular, it doesn't always get heard as disagreement. It gets felt as betrayal. But here's where I think we've confused two very different things. Calling someone out versus calling someone up. Calling out is about exposure. Calling up is about elevation. Calling out says you're wrong and I need everyone to see it. Calling up says we can do better and I'm challenging us to grow. Now, Stephen A. Smith, whether you agree with him or not, tends to be the second. The problem is, in a culture that's been forced to protect itself for so long, accountability can feel like danger. Internal critique can feel like disloyalty, and honesty can feel like an attack. So instead of hearing he wants us to improve, some hear he's siding with them. And his tone doesn't help, I'm gonna be honest with you. Stephen A is very intense, as I said earlier. But that's his brand. Sometimes the delivery overshadows the message. And when conversations are emotional, tones can matter just as much as content. But here's the truth we don't like to sit with. Discomfort is not disrespect. Accountability is not betrayal. And disagreement is not opposition. Calling someone a sellout is often a shortcut. It avoids the harder work of engaging the argument. It turns a difference of thought into a moral judgment. And once we label someone a traitor, we don't have to listen to them anymore. But here's also the danger in that. When we confuse calling up with calling out, we silence the very voices that are trying to sharpen us, not shame us. And I challenge anyone to please drop the link in the comments of this video and show me where Stephen A. Smith has spoken against the Black community. Because in my research and what I have seen, Stephen A. Smith doesn't speak against the Black community. He speaks to it. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's imperfect. But often, if not all, it's honestly. And independent thinkers, especially in marginalized communities, usually get punished first. Not because they hate the group, but because they refuse to treat the group as fragile. Now, I'm going to be this abundantly clear here in Culture Check. It's not about telling you who to agree with. It's about asking whether we still have room for internal accountability without labeling it as betrayal. Because if every challenge feels like an attack and every correction feels like disrespect, we're just going to stop growing. And a culture that can't be called up will eventually collapse under the weight of being called out. And because there is a personal part in here that I can understand the frustrations that Stephen A is feeling. Because I've also been called a sellout too, not because I abandoned my values, because I choose to think independently. And that's why this conversation resonates with me. Whether it's because a family doesn't agree with the decisions I made, whether it's the culture saying I'm selling out for X, Y, and Z. The sellout label is often less about integrity and more about control. And it gets used when someone won't fall in line. And that's why I'm going to be honest to say I probably agree more with Stephen A than I disagree. Not because he's perfect, but because I recognize the cost of standing alone in your thinking. Independent thinkers are often punished first, but history tends to vindicate them later. Culture check isn't about defending individuals, it's about protecting the space where honest thought can exist without punishment. Because the moment disagreement equals betrayal, we don't have culture anymore. We have a cage. Now, this is the culture check in the green, where we have examined what's happening around us without burning everything down to do it. And if this made you uncomfortable, that's okay. That's where growth starts. And once we understand and accept that we have to have these uncomfortable conversations in order to grow, be accountable where we need to be accountable, we're just going to keep repeating the cycle. I don't know about y'all, but I'm going to grow. I want all of us to grow. As I always say, if this video has made you feel a certain type of way, comment below. I would love to cultivate the conversation because this is the space where I'm not going to cancel you. Or you may try to cancel me. Who knows? But I ask you, as I asked earlier, is this based off emotion? Or is this getting based off of facts? Until next time, this is the Culture Check in the Green. Peace.